My son drove 6 hours because he thought I was being manipulated by a man I had met online. He expected to find romantic messages, fake photographs, and some stranger asking his lonely widowed mother for money. Instead, he found hundreds of deposits to an online casino. By the time he opened my account history, I had lost almost $300,000. That money had taken my husband and me more than 30 years to save. I lost it in 8 months. The strangest part is that I wasn't chasing a luxury life. I wasn't trying to buy a mansion or become rich. Most nights, I was just trying to make my house feel less quiet. My name is Linda. I'm 59 years old, and I live in Pennsylvania. For 34 years, I was married to a man named Michael. He was not a perfect husband, and I was not a perfect wife, but we understood each other in the comfortable way that only happens after decades together. Michael knew I hated driving in heavy rain. He knew I always left half a cup of coffee sitting somewhere in the house. He knew I needed the television on while I cooked, even if I wasn't watching it. I knew he pretended not to like reality shows, but somehow remembered every person's name. I knew he checked the doors twice before bed. I knew he would say he didn't want dessert and then eat half of mine. We had 2 children. Our son Daniel lived in Chicago with his wife and their little boy. Our daughter Rachel lived in North Carolina and worked as a physical therapist. They called often, they visited when they could, but adult children have lives. Michael was my life. He died from a heart attack 20 months before everything fell apart. There was no long illness, no time to prepare. He complained about pressure in his chest one evening, and less than 3 hours later, I was sitting in a hospital room holding a hand that no longer held mine back. After the funeral, people stayed close for a while. There were casseroles in my refrigerator, flowers on every table, neighbors asking if I needed anything. Daniel slept on the couch for almost 2 weeks. Rachel reorganized my kitchen even though I asked her not to. Then everyone went home. That is the part nobody explains about grief. Eventually, the world decides the emergency is over. The flowers die, the food runs out. People stop checking every day because they have jobs, children, appointments, and ordinary problems. You are still standing in the same destroyed life, but everyone else has returned to theirs. I worked as an administrative assistant at an elementary school. I had been there for nearly 25 years. I planned to retire at 61, around the same time Michael would have retired from the electrical supply company where he worked. We had talked about traveling, nothing glamorous. Michael wanted to drive across the country and visit national parks. I wanted to rent a small place near the beach for a month and see whether we got bored. We had saved carefully, not because we earned huge salaries. We didn't. We saved because Michael believed every dollar needed a job. He contributed to his retirement account before buying anything for himself. I did the same. We paid extra toward the mortgage when we could. We kept cars until repairs cost more than the cars were worth. There were years when we barely managed, but by the time Michael died, we had almost paid off the house and had a little over $320,000 between our retirement accounts and savings. That was supposed to protect me. Michael used to say, "You'll be all right if anything happens to me." I always told him to stop talking like that. After he died, I repeated those words whenever I felt afraid. I'll be all right. Financially, I was. Emotionally, I was disappearing. The first casino game I played did not use real money. It was one of those free slot games on my phone. I found it through an advertisement while scrolling through Facebook one night. I had been sitting in Michael's chair because I had started doing that after he died. It still had a slight dip in the cushion from the way he sat. Sometimes I placed my hand on the armrest and imagined his hand underneath mine. The television was on, but I couldn't follow whatever was playing. The advertisement showed bright spinning symbols and offered free coins. I downloaded it because I needed something to occupy my mind. That was all. The game was ridiculous. Cartoon diamonds, bells, treasure chests, and loud celebration sounds whenever I won imaginary coins. But it worked. For the first time that evening, I stopped thinking about Michael. I played for almost 2 hours. When I went to bed, I actually slept. The next night, I played again. Then every night, the game gave me daily rewards for coming back. It sent notifications when free coins were ready. It congratulated me for reaching new levels. I knew none of it was real, but it gave my evening structure. At 8, I made tea. At 8:30, I sat in Michael's chair. Then I played until I was tired enough to sleep. A few weeks later, I saw an advertisement for an online casino that used real money. It offered a deposit match and free spins. I almost ignored it. Michael and I had never been gamblers. We bought lottery tickets when the jackpot became enormous, but that was about it. I told myself I would deposit $20. $20 was less than dinner at a restaurant. I created an account, entered my information, and deposited the money. At first, I lost. Then I hit a bonus round. The screen filled with gold lights. Music played. My balance jumped from $12 to more than $300. I remember laughing out loud. There was nobody there to hear me. I kept playing. By midnight, my balance was $1,870. I withdrew $1,500. I didn't believe it would arrive. 2 days later, the money appeared in my bank account. That first win changed the way I saw the casino. It was no longer a stupid phone game. It was something real. The furnace had been making strange noises, so I used some of the money to have it repaired. I bought my grandson a large playset Daniel and his wife had said was too expensive. I sent Rachel money for a plane ticket so she could visit. When Daniel asked where the extra money came from, I said I had received a small payment from one of Michael's old accounts. That was my first lie. It felt harmless because I had used the money for good things. When Rachel arrived, she hugged me and said, "I'm glad you're finally spending something on yourself." I smiled. I did not tell her that I had already deposited another $500 into the casino. The casino became part of my routine faster than I noticed. I played after work. I played while eating dinner. I played in bed. I played when I missed Michael, which meant I played almost constantly. Sometimes I won. That was what kept me there. I might lose $1,000 over several nights and then win $1,400 in 20 minutes. The win erased the memory of everything that came before it. I started telling myself I was close to understanding the games. I changed machines when one felt cold. I increased bets when I thought a bonus was coming. I watched videos made by people who claimed certain games paid more at certain times. I knew, somewhere in my rational mind, that slots were random. But grief does not always live in the rational part of the mind. Neither does addiction. After I deposited a few $1,000s, the casino gave me VIP status. That came with an account manager named Aaron. Aaron called me for the first time on a Wednesday afternoon. He had a friendly voice. He asked how I was doing. He told me he had added free spins to my account and could offer a special deposit bonus. I knew it was his job. I understood that. But he remembered my name. He asked about my weekend. The next time he called, he remembered that I worked at a school. No one had checked on me that day. My children were busy. My coworkers had their own families. The house was silent. But Aaron called. That sounds pathetic. Maybe it was. I began looking forward to those calls. Sometimes he contacted me after a big loss and said he could add cash back to help me recover. Sometimes he offered a bonus that expired before midnight. He never told me to gamble money I couldn't afford. He didn't have to. The offers made every deposit feel like an opportunity I would be foolish to waste. I lost the original winnings within a month. Then I began using my salary. At first, a few $100s at a time. Then more. When my checking account got low, I transferred $5,000 from savings. I told myself it was a temporary gambling budget. When that disappeared, I transferred another $10,000. I didn't think I had lost $15,000. I thought I had invested $15,000 in the chance to recover. That is how gambling changes language inside your mind. Losses become investments, deposits become opportunities, desperation becomes strategy. I turned off paper statements because I didn't want envelopes showing account balances arriving in the mail. I changed passwords. I stopped discussing money with my children. Whenever Daniel asked how I was doing financially, I said, "Your father took care of me." That sentence became another lie. The first time I withdrew from the retirement account, I took $12,000. There were penalties and taxes, but I barely considered them. I thought I would win enough to replace the money before any of that mattered. For 2 days, it seemed possible. I turned $12,000 into almost $29,000. I stared at the withdrawal button. I even clicked it. Then I canceled the withdrawal because Aaron had sent me another offer. If I deposited more, the casino would match part of it. I remember thinking, if I can get to $40,000, I'll take everything out. I never reached $40,000. By the end of the weekend, I had less than $2,000 left. I cried that night, not because of Michael, because of money. That realization frightened me. I promised myself I would stop. The next morning, I deposited another $5,000. My gambling became harder to hide as the months passed. I was distracted at work. I checked my phone while parents stood at the front desk. I forgot appointments. Once, a teacher had to call my name 3 times before I looked up. My principal asked if I needed time off. I blamed grief. That was not completely false. Grief opened the door. But by then, gambling had moved into the whole house. Daniel began to suspect something was wrong when I refused to visit Chicago for my grandson's birthday. I told him flights were too expensive. He reminded me that I had more than enough money. I said I was being careful. A week later, Rachel called and asked whether I had changed financial advisors. I felt my entire body tighten. Why? She said a letter had arrived at her old address because one of my accounts still listed her as an emergency contact. It mentioned a large distribution. I told her I had moved money into a safer investment. She asked what kind. I became angry. I accused her of treating me like I was incompetent because Michael had died. She apologized. After the call, I sat in my kitchen shaking. I had already lost more than $110,000. My children still believed most of the money was there. I became obsessed with replacing it before they found out. That was when I took out a home equity loan. The house was nearly paid off. Michael and I had spent decades making extra payments, skipping vacations, and fixing things ourselves. I borrowed $75,000 against it. When the bank asked what the money was for, I said home renovations. I even asked a contractor for an estimate so I could make the story sound real. I deposited nearly all of it into the casino over 6 weeks. I never renovated anything. The kitchen cabinets Michael had always wanted to replace stayed exactly where they were while the equity from our home disappeared through my phone. By the 7th month, I had lost more than $250,000. I stopped counting after that. The numbers made me physically sick, so I focused on individual sessions instead. Just tonight, just this deposit, just one bonus round. I stopped imagining retirement. I stopped imagining travel. My entire future became the next spin. The truth came out because Daniel thought I was in love, or being scammed by someone pretending to love me. I had started taking calls in private and closing my laptop whenever anyone entered the room. I was sending large amounts of money to payment processors with unfamiliar names. I had refused to tell my children where the money was going. To Daniel, it looked like a romance scam. He called Rachel, and together they decided to come to Pennsylvania without telling me. They arrived on a Saturday morning. I had been awake most of the night gambling. When I opened the door, both of them were standing there with overnight bags. For 1 second, I was happy. Then I saw their faces. Daniel came inside and said, "Mom, We need to talk. I tried to act confused. Rachel asked if there was someone I had met online. No. Daniel said, "You don't need to protect him. There is no him." They looked at each other. Rachel placed a folder on the kitchen table. It contained copies of the notices she had found, information about scams targeting widows, and the number for a fraud hotline. She took my hand. "Whatever happened, we're not angry. We just need you to tell us who has your money." I pulled my hand away. "Nobody has my money." Daniel asked to see my bank accounts. I refused. He said, "Then we're calling the police." "There's no crime." "Then show us." I started crying. That was when they knew. Daniel sat down across from me. "Mom, how much did you send him?" "There is no man." "Then where did it go?" I looked at my children and said the words for the first time. "Online slots." At first, neither of them understood. Rachel actually laughed a little because she thought I was making a joke. Then Daniel said, "What do you mean, online slots?" I opened the casino account on my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly that Rachel had to type the password after I told it to her. The account history loaded. Pages of deposits. $500, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. Sometimes several deposits on the same day. Daniel kept scrolling. Rachel covered her mouth. The total amount deposited was over $294,000. There had been withdrawals too, but nowhere near enough. The net loss was approximately $281,000. That number did not include the interest on the home equity loan, taxes from retirement withdrawals, or credit card debt. Daniel stood up so quickly that his chair fell backward. "Dad worked his whole life for that money." I said, "I know." "No, you don't." I was trying to win it back. Rachel began crying. Daniel walked out of the kitchen and into the living room. I heard him moving things around. Then he returned, holding the small wooden box where Michael kept his retirement documents. He placed it on the table. Inside was a yellow notepad filled with Michael's handwriting. Account names, contribution amounts, retirement estimates, plans for the future. At the bottom of one page, he had written, "Linda will be secure." Daniel pointed at the words. "He thought he protected you." I could not look at him. Rachel asked how much was left. I told her there was around $38,000 in one retirement account I had not touched. That was not true. There was less than $15,000. Even while being exposed, I was still lying. Daniel asked about the house. I told them about the loan. Rachel sat down and lowered her head onto the table. I had never heard my daughter cry like that, not even at her father's funeral. Then Daniel asked me why, not angrily this time. He sounded exhausted. "Why didn't you call us?" I wanted to explain that I did not want to bother them, that they had families and careers, that every phone call seemed to happen while someone was driving, cooking, working, or putting a child to bed. But the truest answer was different. "The casino always answered," I said. The room became quiet. That was the ugliest truth of all. I had traded the life Michael and I built for a machine that was available whenever I felt lonely. Daniel disconnected the laptop from the internet. Rachel took my phone. They called the casino and requested permanent self-exclusion. They called the bank. They contacted an addiction service. They did everything I should have done months earlier. But the money was already gone. That night, Daniel slept in Michael's chair. Rachel slept beside me in my bed like she had when she was a child. I stayed awake listening to both of them breathe. For the first time in months, the house was not quiet. And for the first time, I understood exactly what I had paid to fill that silence. I no longer live in the house. We sold it 6 months after my children discovered everything. The home equity loan, credit cards, taxes, and other debts made keeping it impossible. After the sale, there was not much left. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in a senior community 20 minutes away. The apartment is clean and safe. I hate it, not because there is anything wrong with it, because Michael has never been there. There are no marks on the kitchen wall from measuring the children's height, no stain on the carpet from the Christmas tree that leaked water one year, no chair with the shape of his body in it. When we packed the house, I had to decide what parts of 34 years of marriage would fit inside one apartment. I gave away most of the furniture. Daniel took Michael's tools. Rachel took our wedding china. I kept the wooden box with his retirement notes. I don't know whether keeping it is punishment or remembrance. Maybe both. I still work at the elementary school. I had planned to retire soon. Now I may work until I physically cannot. Sometimes younger coworkers complain about wanting to retire early. I smile and say nothing. My children monitor my finances. I have one bank account with spending limits. I cannot open credit without Daniel receiving an alert. Gambling websites are blocked on my devices. At first, I resented that. I was their mother. I had raised them. I did not like asking my son whether I could make a larger purchase. Then I remembered that I had gambled away more money in one evening than some families earn in a year. Pride is expensive. I can no longer afford it. I attend Gamblers Anonymous twice a week. The first time I introduced myself, I almost walked out. Most of the people were younger than me. Several were men who had lost money betting on sports. I thought my story was different. I was a widow. I was grieving. I had never gambled before. Then a woman across the circle said, "I didn't play because I wanted money. I played because I didn't want to feel my life." That was when I understood I belong there. I have not gambled for 9 months. The urges still come. They arrive at night, usually around the same time I used to sit in Michael's chair. Sometimes I remember the sound of a bonus round, the lights, the moment before the symbols stopped moving. My brain still tells me I might win everything back. Not some of it. Everything. The retirement money, the house, my children's trust, the future Michael and I planned. That is how addiction keeps speaking even after it has already taken everything you can give it. It does not promise a new life. It promises to return the old one. Daniel and Rachel have forgiven me in pieces. Not completely. I don't expect them to. Daniel still becomes quiet whenever money comes up. Rachel calls more often now, but sometimes I hear caution in her voice, as if she is checking whether I sound normal. My grandson once asked why Grandma moved out of her big house. Daniel said I wanted somewhere smaller. I let him say that. A child does not need to know that his grandmother fed a house into a slot machine, one deposit at a time. I used to think the worst part was losing almost $300,000. It wasn't. Money can be counted. The worst losses cannot. I lost the confidence my husband had in me. I lost the freedom to grow old without fear. I lost the home where my children thought they would always be able to find me. I lost the version of myself who believed she was careful, responsible, and strong. Most of all, I changed the meaning of Michael's sacrifice. Every overtime shift he worked, every trip we postponed, every car we kept for one more year, every dinner we cooked instead of ordering. Those choices were supposed to become time. Time together after retirement, time near our children, time without worrying about bills. I converted all of that time into spins that lasted seconds. People ask whether the casino took advantage of my grief. The honest answer is yes. The more honest answer is that grief alone did not deposit the money. I did. Aaron offered the bonuses. I accepted them. The games encouraged me to continue. I continued. The casino knew how to keep me playing, but I was the one who kept choosing not to tell my children the truth. I have to own that. Otherwise, recovery becomes another lie. I still talk to Michael sometimes, usually at night. I tell him I'm sorry. I tell him the children are doing well. I tell him I sold the house. That is the part where I always cry. In my imagination, he never yells. That somehow makes it worse. I spent 8 months believing the next win would make the house feel alive again. Instead, I sold the house to pay for the silence I was trying to escape. The online slots did not replace my husband. They replaced the grief for a few seconds at a time, and I paid for those seconds with the future we had spent 30 years building. The money is gone. The house is gone. Michael is still gone. The only thing I can do now is stop running from the silence. So every evening, I make tea. I sit in my small apartment. I turn off my phone, and I let myself miss him without trying to win him back.